Bible today. So if you want to turn there, I guess while I get started, it's going to be in Revelation 3. And I guess I'll just start off this morning. I was a little bit excited. Do you ever notice when you're in a tough time, if you have the right people there, that life seems like it's going to be okay, or whatever you're dealing with is going to be okay? So I noticed John this morning here. So last fall, no, it was in the spring, we were seeding, and I broke my McFarland harrows. There was a pin that was gone on the harrows, and you can see when he pulled into the field and unfolded, if that pin had come out, it would have like ripped the whole wing off. And so I noticed it, and I knew in that moment we were done. And the drills were chasing the harrows behind, and I needed these harrows going, and I was like, what is I going to do? And John's going by on the road, so he pulled in. I'd already talked to Donnie, my other friend, and then me and Alex were there. Johnny, he can swing a sledgehammer like nobody's business. So we have the right person there to hammer the pin out. And then I phoned Donnie, and I was like, do you have a pin? It was like this crazy 1 7/8". And then I had Jim on the line already, and he's like, I have a 2-inch pin. If you need it, we can turn it down in 5 minutes and get you going. And so then in that moment, I'm like, hey, I have Donnie, I have me, I have Alex, I have John running the sledgehammer, I have Jim on standby. We're not, nothing can stop us. And then in that moment, you recognize that, well, 5 minutes ago, you were sure anxious. What changed? And you're like, your friends, your community, your family. And so then this morning, I was just encouraged. So I kind of just got all excited before I was standing up, and I'm like, wow, we have everything right here. What more do we need? What more do we need? And to that end, a footnote is, even if that is all taken away, we still have Jesus, right? And we need to, is he truly enough? And that's what we need to say, yes, he is. So basically, I titled this morning, Open Doors and Closed Doors. And I just wrote here, Lord, open doors no man can close, and closed doors no man can open. And I just said, I remember praying this prayer lots in my life, even to do with farm equipment or different things going on when I am uncertain. And I just say, make it plain to me, right? I am but a layman, and there are some things that I get over anxious about, I get over excited about, and then it's like, I just need to hear a yes or a no. And Lord, I'm going to do this thing, and if you don't approve of this thing, put a roadblock in front of me, please, right? So that's where this is coming from today. I have prayed this prayer many times in my life when I was uncertain. Lord, I ask you would make it plain to me, and that you would open doors that no one can close, and close doors that no one can open. I ask you to allow me the wisdom to see and know the difference, and I believe that is very important. I was again having a flashback to a tractor I was going to buy at a Ritchie Brothers sale down in Edmonton, and there was some part in me. It says, is there an answer in the Bible for if you're supposed to buy the tractor or a new truck or a new something, right, for whatever type of operation you're running? And somebody's like, well, that answer's not in the Bible. And I'm like, yes, it is. Every answer is in the Bible. And they're like, specifically? And I'm like, yes, it is. And I had a flashback to this big blue tractor I bought. And I said, Lord, shut a door that no man can open if I'm not supposed to buy this tractor. And I had set a limit that I was going to spend on that tractor. And then the sale day come, I couldn't get a hold of the owner. He kept ignoring my calls, whatever the case was. I had about this much peace about that. And then sale day comes, and I kept hitting the button. You know the thing you're not supposed to do on sale day when you hit the button to bid higher? And I bid twice as much as my set limit. I had zero peace. And then as I look back, I'm like, you know the thing that I didn't do? I didn't pray for wisdom. And I certainly didn't pray for a door to be closed. And I was like, you know what? Sometimes for everything in life, you're like, Lord, just grant me peace. If I'm to do this thing or I'm not to do this thing. I think that's such an important thing. And I think we can apply that to each area of our lives. So Revelation 3, 7, and 8. So I have talked about this before, and I'll touch on why I had went through this before in a different sermon. But Revelation 3, write this letter to the angel of the church, 7 and 8, not on verse 1. verse 7 and 8. Write this letter to the angel of the church of Philadelphia. This is the message from the one who is holy and true, the one who has the key of David. What he opens, no one can close, and what he closes, no one can open. I know all things you do, and I have opened a door for you that no one can close. You have little strength, yet you obeyed my word and did not deny me. So I had a question based on them verses. Who here, I was really excited to see Jim here, because he's more seasoned in life than I am. And so I said here, who grew up using horses to pull machinery? You actually did? What did you do? Like,
and we had a cultivator that we pulled with horses.
Okay.
For gardens and stuff, and always hauled all our wood in with horses.
Okay.
And
But you actually pulled a cultivator.
yeah.
Okay, so I knew a guy that had brought Stooks in from the field to the, what's the machine called?
Thresher?
The thrashing machine.
Right,
Right, so that, okay.
Did that too, yeah.
Okay, but then they had a tractor to run the thrashing machine, right? But you're actually saying you pulled a cultivator with it,
I had
okay?
a big steel wheel John Deere to run the thrashing machine, but the horses would bring all the stooks in, and
Okay.
all the bales were always hauled in.
Okay.
Horses.
Okay, so now you have, and Jim, would you have seen horses back in your day?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so they would have actually been towing stuff like plows and
Yeah.
cultivators,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so then what I wrote here, and I want to keep that in our mind. We had horses, so if you had a horse to do a job, you were like, I don't have to do the job with a hoe, and so this is fantastic. I'm going to get my 1 horsepower horse over here, and we're going to do the work with 1 horsepower, okay? And then we somehow went to tractors. And the first tractors would have had steel wheels. So you said steel wheels. And they would have not had a cab, to my recollection, right? Okay? So steel wheels, open cab, and then all of a sudden rubber wheels. And we're like, right? Mind-blowing rubber wheels. We can go down the road with banging and not them big lugs or whatever. And then now we have tractors with a cab. Right? I was in the yard the other day and it had a cab. No heat. No, but this cab was no heat, no air conditioning. It was a cab, and it would have kept the dust off you. And you're like, this is going to be great compared to the steel wheels and all the first ones. And then we had the heaters, right? And then we had the air conditioning, and all these things are a big deal. And now we have tractors that have GPS. I seen Case, I think it was the article I was reading. It was an electric tractor, but fully autonomous. Fully autonomous, no cab on this thing whatsoever. You would send it out into the field to do your work, and you'd program. Huh?
And it would plow the neighbor's
It
field?
would plow your field, and it would cross the fence and plow the neighbor's field too when the GPS piled up. Absolutely. So I said, as we look at all of these, remembering, and the people that were here, they're like, we had the 1 horsepower, and now there's tractors with 600 horse, like you name it, right? And so then I said, what was the goal of these advancements? Paulie's like, oh, I know a few goals, right? Right? Well, so name some of these goals.
More acres.
Okay, that would be like a spin-off of,
Yeah.
would you call it efficiency?
I guess so. Efficiency.
Okay. Huh?
Being more comfortable.
Being more comfortable. Yeah, that's a good one, especially in life, right? Okay.
Easier.
Protection.
I wrote make it easier. That was on my list.
Protection.
Okay.
Yeah.
From
Safety.
dust and stuff.
Yeah, or even from safety, right? You get
Yeah.
them, yeah, okay.
They cost more money.
They do cost more money. So I said get more, like Ruben, get more done is kind of what I wrote, right? And then I said just be more efficient. And as we look back, and I even think of Worsley or Bear Canyon, and Jim, you would know this too, even from Worsley perspective, there was likely a home on every quarter section, at least. And you could make a living. Families, like you look at the schools back in the day, and now as things have expanded and expanded and expanded. And each one of us would have a line that we would draw. And we would not want to sacrifice more than that. So what is your line? And for some that had horses, they're like, I'd go back to horses in an instant. And for some of us that never had to do with horses, you're like, you put a horse in my yard, and I wouldn't know what to do with the thing. Right? Let alone hook it up to anything, except Kenzie really wants to learn what to do with a horse. Okay, but you get the idea, right? So for me, I'm like, if you had air conditioner broke, I'll tough it out. But I have an old Stagger and the doors open up backwards. And if the air conditioner breaks on that, the dust is crazy. You just about want to take the doors off. And you're like, but I will tough it out. And for some people, I had a GPS on my swather pile up. I sat there for half a day. And I had some 70-year-old guys start laughing at me. They're like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, if I don't start with this, then the combine GPS won't work, and all this stuff. I am getting this thing fixed. And I recognized I will not go back on that line. And then as I was writing all this, I'm like, of course you know this is not going to be all about farm equipment today. Where's the line in your life spiritually? Where is something in your life you said that I am not going to go back to this because it's ruined or destroyed, right? And we've talked about all them things, and Melissa says you always hit the big five. You hit, you want to quit smoking, and you're never going to go back. Alcohol, and you see how destructive it is, and you're not going to go back. And then money, greed, power, you name that. And then Melissa's like, reminds me of like, what about gossip? Is that bad? Malicious behavior against your neighbor. Don't forget those things, right? Because some people are very addicted to being malicious and to gossiping about their neighbors and to slander and all of that type of stuff, right? So I live a little over here. Some people live a little over here. Whatever that thing is to you. And it's like once you recognize it's back and maybe you've already eradicated it out of your life, how do you not go back to it? Right? Is there those things that you have chosen and they keep drawing you and sucking you back in? Lord, if you shut a door in my life, let no man open that door again. Right? Let no man open that door again. Okay. Do you notice once you have something that it's very hard to go back and do without it? Right? So even 3 square meals a day, let's go there. That's something simple. And then to go without food, you would like, I prefer to have a meal or 2 a day. That's fantastic. I've had a furnace. Jim was just telling me he's got natural gas. And I'm like, Jim, they're taking out the line now and you got to go back to wood. You're like, I don't want to go back to wood. I did that. No, thank you. It's getting a little heavy for me, right? But right, you see these things and we call them advancements in our society, but once they have them, what have they done to us? We can talk about Facebook, we can talk about Twitter, we can talk about whatever. And the problem that I see, and I talked to a fellow, he come over the other night, and he was talking about, did you hear about this book that's not in the Bible? Did you hear about this thing that's not in the Bible? Did you hear about that thing? And I'm like, are you talking about the Catholic Bible, like the Apocrypha, or are you talking like the book of Enoch? But there's these things on the internet, and they don't stop. And I said, FYI, if you believe in good and evil, here's the deal. Satan tried to get rid of the Bible. This is real stuff. Yep. Right? Because some people even say, when you say the name Satan, you're like going into this make-believe round. You're like, good and evil has a name, in case we're wondering. They tried to eradicate the Bible. They tried to make it so that the Bible didn't end up in the hands of every person on the planet. Right? That didn't work. He couldn't stop the Bible. Right? Remember when I talked about the book 1984 and he looked at these 2 other writers? George Orwell, the book 1984, and he said, the one writer said they're going to take away all of our information, and the other writer said they're going to give us so much information that we're going to drown in a sea of irrelevance. And George Orwell says, what world are we living in currently today? And too much information. Because what happens? Do you need more than this?
No.
Do we need an air conditioner?
We don't.
No.
We don't, but it's sure nice. I know, right? But I'm just saying, flip that over when we have these conversations and you're like, you're way too much in the world of analogies. Some people give me a hard time about my analogies, but my analogies draw me into the spiritual realm. Everything we have is in here. And then what happens? Some reason do we get bored? Do we need more information? No, we don't. We don't need to look for the new biggest thing. We could spend our days. Okay, God gives a lot of people to explain maybe this. But just remember, He'll explain it to you. Jesus is the best homeschool teacher you will ever have. I believe that. Okay? Seminary, all of that stuff, I'm not going to run it down. It has its place if they have good teachers there. If they don't, your homeschool teacher, Jesus, just open your Bible. Take the time to do that. Okay? Okay, now here's where I repeat myself. I'm not talking about having AC and then going without. Roll down your window. Okay? I'm talking about having a truck to go to town and then figuring out that you had to go without and use a horse.
Okay.
Okay? I'm up in Worsley and I want to go to Fairview.
Make the trip count.
That's gonna, you are gonna make the trip count.
You don't
Okay?
get done working once a month.
The concept to these analogies though is take your mind to the place where you're like, this would be very hard on me. It would be very hard on us to do without some things. And when you realize that, ask yourself, how much power does this thing have over me? Each one has that thing, and to me, my little quirky thing is running water. Heated running water. And I'll, huh?
Sewer is much more.
Okay, but I mean, each of us have these things. I'm like, if I can go at the end of the day and I'll get grimy and dusty and I'll do whatever it takes in the morning, I'm like, I can have a hot shower and it is fantastic. And take that shower away, I wonder what I would do. I wonder what I would do, right? We all have our opinions over the last turn of events, but I have found them very fascinating to see what mankind is capable of. And the only thing, because I don't get hung up in the politics of what's gone on over the last several years, is I try to look at things that are not up for debate. Okay? Not up for debate. We can close our borders. We can shut down air travel. We can do all these things. And then the other day I heard about starving children again. And I'm like, what? Are we not choosing the right things? We have, what's it when the government pays you money? So, well, no, like the thing for the COVID money, whatever it was called. So, like, yeah? Sure. Oh, that's what it was called. Okay. So they're giving this money out, and I'm like, but don't tell me the article about the starving kids again. Because is it our way? Like, we got to have our air conditioning and our heaters, right? So that part isn't up for debate. And you're like, there's kids that are still getting abducted and all of this stuff, yet we could choose to stop the world. Why can't we choose to stop? And then all you're reminded, because the part that's not up for debate is good and evil. The part that's not up for debate is free choice. And once we recognize that, you're like, I don't need no news stream to tell me what is going on, right? I don't need to debate that. I don't need to get angry with my neighbors that don't align with my way of thinking. I'm like, just recognize that there is good and evil, and that there is a creator, and that there is a Satan, okay? And we need to land there. Okay, so I said that would be very mind-blowing for us when you have taken yourself to that thing that you would have a tough time doing without, whether it was your home, your vehicle, you're running water like I mentioned, and I basically just said that would be crazy. I wrote a footnote. What does it say in here that's going to happen closer to the end? There's going to be some tough times, people. There's going to be some tough times. There's going to be some evil that comes. There's going to be some difference of opinion that come. There's going to be their version of right and wrong, and there's going to be your version of right and wrong. And you need to decide which is God's will, what his version of right and wrong is. So we kicked off in Revelation 3, and the context for these couple of chapters, the first couple of chapters in Revelation, was to the 7 churches. And when I spoke on them before, I went through all of these, each of the letters to the church. And do you remember what it said at the end of each letter to the church? It said, he who has ears to hear, let him listen, let him hear. Right? So today, let us hear, let us listen as we read on. So Revelation 3, 9 to 13. Look, I will force those who belong to Satan's synagogue, those liars who say they are Jews but are not. And I just kind of thought on that, and I'm like, you know what, this is for anybody who chooses to lie. Right? We were talking about sports, we were talking about land deals, grain deals, you name it. If you choose to lie, there's a difference between making a mistake and then correcting it, and then actually choosing it. And knowing well, premeditated. Let's land on that word, premeditated, right? That's where we need to focus. And they're not. To come and bow down at your feet. They will acknowledge that you are the ones I love. Verse 10. I circled this. Because you have obeyed my command to persevere. What is the word that you have got to know me for here since I've been here the last couple of years? Axiomatically. So if we read that again with that word in our mind, because you have obeyed my command to persevere, I will protect you from a great time of testing. Axiomatically, what does that tell you? If you have not persevered,
You're going to be hurt.
you're going to be hurt. That's what it says. There doesn't need to be another sentence in here telling that. It says, if you do this, if you follow. Remember, a lot of people, they look at the Bible and they're like, they'll tell you standing from the outside, it's a book of rules, of the do's and don'ts to do in life. And I'm like, no, stop looking at it that way. If you look at the Bible and you actually do what it says, you're like, your life will be enriched, right?
Yeah.
Drive somewhere with a great valley or precipice or gorge on each side of you, and then see how many roads we have in this province that won't have a guardrail on it or some sort of barrier. Is that a rule to you, that barrier?
No, that's safe.
I'm here to protect you. That's the way I look at the Bible. Did I always look at the Bible that way? No.
Probably not.
Right? But it seems like once you get older or you start to think about these things in a more deeply fashion, you're like, these guardrails, these things, they can be here to protect us. And this book doesn't just give us a list of rules and commands to follow. It will enrich your life. So God basically is saying here, because you have obeyed my command to persevere, I will protect you from a great time of testing that will come upon the whole world to those who belong to this world. Verse 11, I am coming soon. Hold on to what you have so that no one will take away your crown. All who are victorious will become pillars in the temple of God, and they will never have to leave it. And I will write on them the name of God, and they will be citizens in the city of my God, the new Jerusalem that comes down from the heavens, from my God. And I will also write on them my new name. Anyone with ears to hear must listen to the Spirit and understand what he is saying to the churches. Okay, so I'm going to flip back to the tractor analogy for a minute. Not the most perfect analogy, but it's going to work. On April 22nd, I think that was last Friday, I went down, I left from Worsley to St. Isidore to pick up a drill. So St. Isidore is across the Peace River, across the DMI bridge. It's 170 kilometers. And I am like, I am not going to tow a drill with my big truck. I've been there before, and it didn't end well for me, so I'm fully aware. John's laughing at me because he pulled one back this last week too. But regardless, I'm like, I used to pull a drill to Bear Canyon. It was 84 kilometers away. I'm like, 170 kilometers. I'll just take a thermos of coffee. It's going to be the most amazing day ever, and it's going to be peaceful and great and relaxing. And so I took off at 4 in the morning, and I totally beat the sun out of bed. And it hasn't happened for a while. When I was working at Fort St. John, I beat it out of bed every morning for 5 years more. That was my whole career, was beating the sun out of bed. Okay? And since then, I haven't got to accomplish that very often. So I left at 4, and then I have to send a few texts to a few people because I'm like, ooh, look at me, I beat the sun out of bed this morning, and it hasn't happened in the last 2 years. So I sent a message to Sharon, my mother-in-law, and I'm like, I got up at 4, and the sun was lazy. I got up early just so I could judge the sun for getting up late. And it only got up at 6:30. How dare it get up at 6:30? So and then she phones me at 7, and I'm talking to her on the phone. Okay, and so Sharon's a spiritual mentor in my life. So again, ask her how I am. Ask Melissa how I am. Don't ask me how I am. She'll probably give you a more accurate assessment. And so I'm talking to her on the phone. And when something bad happens, there used to be a version of me that you would curse and swear. And I hope if I come to your house and you're working cows, that if I see you here on Sunday and you profess the love of Jesus, that the version that I see you here today matches up with the version that I see in your cow pen at home. And if it doesn't, work hard at closing that gap. Okay, there might be some struggles, like we said, at work, in our life, whatever them things are. Work on closing that gap. Okay, so I'm talking to Sharon. It's 7 o'clock. I'd already bragged about beating the sun up so that I could judge it. And we're sitting there and I'm clipping along the tractor 30 kilometers an hour. And I see this truck coming and I'm like, hey, Sharon, how's it going? Yeah. And all of a sudden, a rock comes off the load bed because he passes me at 120 kilometers an hour. And poof! And I'm like, I said in the phone, what the? And that's where I stopped, is what the? Because we would all sort of have words that come after the what the. And my brain went to the Tower of Babel. What the Babel? What the Babel? But my language was not confounded. I didn't say, I didn't babble. I just said, what the? And then that's what I thought of. And Sharon's like, what happened? And I'm like, I'm wearing my window on my lap. That's what happened, okay? The whole front window. I phoned John Deere at 8 o'clock. From John Deere, the window is $3,400.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, yeah, okay, but I got a used one. There's a whole backstory to that. I won't bore you with the analogy. Right away, I'm telling you, within 15 minutes of that window laying on my lap, I only live in the natural to think in the spiritual. And I told Melissa, I'm like, God put that window there to maybe save my life. Because if that windscreen hadn't been there and I was an open cab, that's amazing. So then I wasn't so frustrated about this broken window anymore. All the while, I'm at the Figure 8 Lake Road corner. And I went from what? I went from comfort. I wrote it down. I'm going to repeat myself when I say it from the paper. I went from comfort. I had the heater on. I had the radio on. I'm sipping my coffee. And like, I'm in my t-shirt. I have the hoodie on the back of the seat. You know, my coat's on the floor. I'm in my bare feet because we just washed the floor. You know, all this stuff. And then boom. And the glass is covered. I grabbed something out of my lunch bag. I took it out of the wrapper and I threw the wrapper on the floor, which I never do because the floor is clean. And I'm like, now I'm covered in glass. And then right away I thought, instantly in life, you were given something and then it was taken away. We happen to be in Revelation and everybody's getting all worked up about the world and what's going on around us. And I'm like, do you know you are going to have something and it's going to be taken away? Are you mentally prepared for that? There's a sticker on lots of my farm equipment, that word again, fortify. If you're not there, I need you to think about these things. To somehow fortify, to build up the ramparts and be like, you know what? I recognize the thing that if somebody comes along and says, it's this thing or you're out. And you'd be like, I guess I'm out. Whatever that looks like. But if you don't, I say people say that. I'm kind of the hyper individual and they're like, I get jacked up when somebody comes to me and confronts me about the way that I believe in something. And then I'm like, well, you just retort at them. And if you do, it's like you better slow down ahead of that and maybe have the conversation with yourself. And say, if this thing happens, I'm going to choose to respond this way. Instead of just like knee-jerking all the time, like in our culture, how we want to do, right? Okay, so back to the window. It's laying on my lap. In a split second of time, I crossed over from feeling warm, protected, and comfortable to what? Not so warm, not so comfortable, and not so protected.
And miserable.
I hung up my coat on the mirror and I tarp strapped it across so I could hide behind the cart in case in case another rock come through the window. I put my hoodie on, it's zero, and I'm holding on to my hoodie as I'm driving the tractor and I'm thinking, if these old boys can do this, right, with an open cab tractor, I surely can do this with my open cab tractor. I'm going to tough it out. So then I drove all the way across the Figure 8 Lake Road and I come out on the other, the Manning Highway, and there's the maintenance yard there and there's two grader guys. I run up to the one grader guy and I said, hey brother, I just had my window smashed out. And he looks at the tractor and he's like, whoa, I'll help you out. And I'm like, okay, so we got some cardboard and some plastic and I made a makeshift window there and then you couldn't see through the plastic, so I had to cut a little hole in the plastic. And then I finished going to get the drill and I brought it all the way home that way, okay? So all the while though, I was thinking not so warm, not so protected. If that happens to you in your day-to-day life, what are you going to lean on? Okay? You might not be able to go get a piece of cardboard and some duct tape and some plastic to fix your life in the end. So what are you going to lean on?
Jesus.
Right? That's the part of the analogy where my silly tractor analogy ends, and then you go, I will lean on Jesus. I will lean on this book. I will not need any more. We need to know that. Because
That's
we are
why
going to
we
keep
stand
getting,
on the promises.
yeah, we're going to keep getting bombarded with stuff though, with reasons why not to. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so it was all stripped away instantly. Footnote, I did not have a choice when this happened, right? That was the other thing I wanted to make sure and add in. We think in our society that we will have these nice, fuzzy, warm choices to make, and sometimes you won't. It will just happen. You're in the end, you will have no choice. And basically, remember, I said this, in the end, everybody's like, well, is this the sign of this, or is this the sign of that, or is this the sign of that? And I said, in case you're wondering about what's going on, I said, I don't worry about that. I listen for the trumpet, number one thing. And number two thing, I believe that we will not be tricked or duped.
No, we will not.
You'll be asked, whom do you serve? And you will have the choice to say, I serve the world and its ruler, or I serve King Jesus. Practice that.
Yeah.
Right? Because in the moment, you're either going to say, I serve King Jesus, or you're going to put your head down and you're going to turn and walk with the world. I think that's the way it's going to roll. That's my personal opinion. Okay? Nothing wakes you up in life like having a window laid on your lap. And I underlined, nothing wakes you up. So just in your Bible, or in your mind here right now, wakes you up. And now we're going to flip back to this start of Revelation 3. And now each of these churches, I think, I might have wrote this again. I'm going to repeat myself a lot. So all these churches that he wrote to, they either have a letter of accommodation or a hey. Pay attention, right? So whatever that's called, started like rebuke or accommodation. So now when we back up to the start of this, verse 3, write this letter to the angel of the church of Sardis. This isn't the church of Philadelphia anymore. This is the church of Sardis. This is the message from the one who has the sevenfold Spirit of God and the 7 stars. I know all the things you do in the barnyard, behind closed doors, at your place of work, whatever this is what he's saying. He leaves nothing out. I know all things you do. I can see through your roof. I can hear through your walls.
Yeah.
And that you have a reputation for being alive, but you are dead. I circled the word reputation. What is your reputation? Again, back to that. I tell people, one of my, what do you call people that look after you? They say, hey, you're...
Mentor?
Yeah, no, when you're asking accountability. One of my accountability partners is an atheist, but he happens to know the Bible. And I said, if I'm doing something that I shouldn't be, I need you to call me out on it. Because if I'm a joker in your sight, then what I say has no value. And why people say, why are you so passionate about that? Because I used to be the joker. And there's still some things in my life that obviously need work, as we all do. But we're trying to close that gap. That's the goal. You have a reputation for being alive, but you are dead. Verse 2, remember I said in your brains, wakes you up. It says that. Verse 2, wake up. Strengthen what little remains, for even what is left is almost dead. I find that your actions, don't tell me. Don't tell me how you are. Show me. Okay? Show me. I find that your actions do not meet the requirements of God. So many people look at the church and they're like, if that's church, I want nothing of it. And I'm like, that could be an excuse. A footnote to that is I'm like, you're just making an excuse because you don't want to hand your life over to Jesus. That's one part. The other part is maybe that's actually the truth. But then what I tell them in that moment is don't let the bad hypocrite, because we all have hypocritical tendencies in our life, don't let that person sort your truth out for you. Right? So you cover both bases there. You're like, if you're just making an excuse because you don't want to, then just stop coming up with excuses and blaming other people. And then don't look to the bad person that happens to be in the church, because there's going to be that bad person in almost every organization. It's a part of life. And if that's going to sort your truth out for you, then kind of shame on you, because I want to be able to be the type of person to sort my own truth out. Okay. I find your actions to be with God. In verse 3, go back to what you heard and believed first, right? And we can all think of that. The first time, right? And you're like, I knew what truth was. And then all of a sudden, I got on the internet, or I read these books, or I read these articles, and it almost started to water me down. Where did that come from? So back the boat up to when you first heard the truth. Hold to it firmly. Repent and turn to me again. I circled this again. If you don't wake up, I will put a window on your lap. And rock through it, and you will go, what the babble? What the just happened? Okay? I will come to you suddenly, as unexpected as a thief.
In the night.
And now I will go back to, if you've torn my analogy apart, doesn't matter because it will fit here in this instant again. In an instant. That window, that protection, that whatever I thought the world offered me
Yes.
was taken. And then you're like, what the babble? What are you going to do in that moment? Okay? You will have choices. Okay. I'm coming to the end here. So sometimes as we move through the years, things can come along as society advancements. And I'm not going to be that guy to say bad, 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 because I look at the TV in your house and money. How you choose to use these things is up to you. There's part of me that wishes that I could do without a TV, because if it's there, I have less. Like, and somebody would say that you can't control the TV. Shall we grab a whiskey bottle? That's the way I think of a TV. Me and my whiskey bottle do not ride around together. I had to remove it from my life. It was like, you can't handle it? If I can't, I'm certainly going to gouge it out. Why would I not do that? Right? And again, cover off the gossip, cover off the maliciousness, right? Then we're going to come back to, if the TV is your thing. I had a buddy that opened up a flip phone, and he's like, I could not handle the access to the screen on my phone. For some reason, my TV gets me in a little more trouble than my cell phone. My cell phone doesn't get me in trouble. I don't know why that is. Why is that? That's just me. It's the way God created me. So whatever that thing is, identify it. If it has to be removed, remove it. Even if it has 10% good and 90% bad. You're leaving a lot of bad linger there for that 10% good. So, okay, that's my big takeaway there. Society advancements: horses, tractors, cabs, heaters, air conditioners. I covered off the Twitter, the Facebook, right? I want to catch everything, all of these things, whatever it is for you. Some things may be fine, but we need to be alert when things cross over into our spiritual lives. If things make our life easier, maybe they make them more busy because they're easier. We've all been there. Okay? Or maybe they make them less busy. And for you, right, Joel, you're like, I need to keep my hands busy, because if I don't keep my hands and my mind busy, whoo, she ain't a good thing. Right? And all of us, we're going to have that thing. So you're like, if I'm too busy, then I drift away from God. If I'm not busy enough, I'm the type of person that'll get myself in trouble. So you will have that gauge of how you are personally. Whatever the thing is that takes away from chasing after God, then that thing may be a hindrance to you. Right? John Wesley's mom, whatever that thing that takes away your spiritual relish towards God, that thing, no matter how innocent it is into itself, may be sin to you. That's a fantastic prayer. Right? That's a fantastic thing to keep front and center. After God, so I do say that if you're chasing after God, and if you're not, then whatever that thing is, it may be a hindrance to you. And just to wrap it up, I said, wake up, stay alert. And some tools for that: prayer, read your Bible, and meditate on godly things. Because some people would say that, like, reading the Bible is tough for me. And I'm like, you know what? Put your hand on the Bible in the morning when you wake up and choose to think about. You might not even have to open it. You're like, I'm going to choose today to think upon godly things. And walk out the door and start your day. And that little thing might even set the course for your entire day. Maybe you are the type of person that you're like, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do a 15-minute devotion. Or I'm going to read 5 minutes of the Bible. Or whatever it is. But just that note, when you wake up in the morning, consciously, I am going to think upon such things. Right? That God wants me to do. So, okay.